Hey, fellow comic book fans, and welcome to episode 12 of the Brazen weekly comic book podcast. I'm your host, Charlie Chipman. With me, as always, is my co-host, Dave Robbins.
Hello, friends.
And Ben Peterson is not here today.
We believe he's being eaten by bears.
And while we cannot confirm or deny that, we know that he's outside doing things. He's not inside where it's safe. But regardless, Dave, what day of the week is it, sir?
Today's Wednesday, April 18th, and it's New Comic Book Day.
All right, so we got a whole lot to talk about. Another great week. How about we start off, Dave, with some DC?
Yeah, Batman 45, The Gift, everybody's favorite interdimensional time-traveling loser. Well, I'm probably being unfair, but
Yeah.
Booster Gold shows up, and he thinks he's doing the right thing.
Yeah. And it turns out that in typical Booster Gold fashion, things don't really go as according to plan as he had hoped. And overall, speaking of being a gift, this really was a pretty damn good comic book. Visually, there was a whole lot going on. I know I had a few moments that I really couldn't believe. But Dave, jumping into Batman, what do you think of the series? Because it's been a while, right, since you've read so much Batman?
Yeah, I mean, Batman, yeah, I'm not that much of a DC guy so much or a superhero guy, but I like Batman. I like the whole idea of Batman. And this was pretty interesting. This is completely unlike any Batman I've ever read before, and admittedly so. It's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And then when Booster Gold shows up, things are supposed to be different. So having said that, anybody who approaches this issue, you got to really stick to the willful suspension of disbelief.
Yes.
Because there are serious changes, like kind of anti-Batman canon stuff going on here, and things that are unlikely to have occur anyway. And so you kind of have to go with it to enjoy this story.
Yeah, because if you dive in and start looking at details to pick apart, you'll find them.
Yeah.
And once you kind of get wrapped up in your own head with, would this have happened? Would this not have happened? Because we all know every time that we have any sort of change in time, any sort of displacement, we have these alternate realities and we're left saying, well, yeah, something would have changed here, but would that really have happened? And I think this is an issue that, like you said, Dave, very entertaining. Even if you're just jumping in and it's been a while since you've read a Batman comic, there's something here for you. But if you've read a lot of Batman comics and you're current and you jump right in and you really sit and examine all of the creative liberties, I guess you would say, that have been taken, you may not be happy.
Well, I mean, it could pick out a few things like, well, that's unusual. That's unlikely to have occurred.
Exactly.
But then again, there are a couple other things that, oh, that's interesting. Suppose that did happen. That would make an interesting way to run the world.
Exactly. And there are some things that really that'll put smiles on the faces of Batman fans. So
yeah, there's definite not quite Easter eggs, but definitely callbacks to different versions of different characters that work pretty well.
Yeah.
Visually, they work pretty well. I mean, this one tire shop, shall we say?
Yeah.
That is just kind of, it's cool in a number of different ways.
Yeah. Yeah, it works on multiple levels.
Yeah.
And, aside from the story and aside from all these little plot details that we've been, hinting about, I really liked the look of this book. Tony Daniel illustrated it, and there's a few really great panels. I don't want to give too much away, but I really like his Batman design here. Even though his Batman looks different and does different things than, the Batman that we know and love. And there's one scene in particular where Batman is kind of perched on something, and he's got his cape down, and it totally looks like a Todd McFarlane cape.
Yep.
Like, it's cool. It's cool. I mean, you have a lot going on, especially early on in the book. A lot of cool things. A few things happen that are just, whoa. Let me just take a step back for a minute. Very exciting, though. And the book's ending, I think, really sets up issue number 46 very well. I'm eager to see what happens.
Yeah.
And how everything plays out.
I think this book takes an unusual turn. Big risk, I guess we can say.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But yeah, it's going to be something new and interesting. And I'm willing to take a chance on it, despite its deviations from expectations.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's got something to say that'll be pretty interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, and it really starts out with a bang. Like, big bang. So, starts out with a big bang, ends with a pretty decent cliffhanger. Overall, I just thought it was a pretty good issue. But, that's not the only good issues we have coming from DC. We had a lot this week. A lot of DC books to talk about.
Yeah.
And I think one that we've been following pretty relatively close now for some time has been Superman.
Right.
With the Boys Are Re-Death story arc. And this week we have issue Superman number 45.
45.
Yeah, Superman number 45, which was pitched or summarized to be the finale of the Boys Are Re-Death arc. But this is one of those books where you really can't go by the publisher's summary.
Yeah, technically, it is the last appearance of Boizarro in this arc, but it's pretty much got nothing to do with him at all. There's an appearance of him, other leftovers from Bizarro World as a reference to the destruction of the Bizarro universe, but everything takes place in Hamilton or outside Hamilton, and it's pretty dull.
Yeah, it is. It's a bit of a. See, I don't know what's coming up next, what we're going into, obviously, but it's we lost some momentum, I think, from the Boizarro Re-Death arc. Especially, it felt like issue 44. Some things were tied up a little too quickly and conveniently. Like, I know we were very much looking forward to the battle with the Legion of Fun.
Yeah.
And that was over before it started. I felt like, and now in issue number 45, it's an issue that's illustrated well. It's readable. It's a decent story, but it's not really what I was expecting, and I'm kind of let down by it.
I mean, on the good side, it's kind of a celebration of Superman.
Yes.
And a celebration of Superboy. And coming out in the same week that Action Comics 1000 comes out,
yes,
I can understand why they might want to do that. It's in the spirit of Action Comic 1000 in that it is a celebration of what Superman means to people.
Definitely. Yeah, it does work. And the ending of this book is a pretty feel-good ending. Not very exciting, but it is a feel-good ending. And Dave, like you said, we do have Action Comics number 1000 coming out this week. But since there's so much to talk about in Action Comics 1000, we're actually recording a separate special edition of the podcast.
Yeah.
So that episode will actually be up in 2 days on Friday the 20th.
Right.
So
yeah, it's 90 pages long.
Yeah.
And you've got so many great artists and illustrators.
Yeah.
Some of our favorites for sure.
Yes.
Just to give you a brief, it's good. There's lots of good stuff in it.
Yeah. There's a whole lot to talk about.
Yeah, exactly.
And another thing, just truly celebrating Superman and his rich history, and really, showcasing what he means, to different people, and how he has grown over the years, how he hasn't grown over the years. There's a lot there. Like I said, I think that we had talked about this before. The best way to approach it is just to do a completely separate episode. So that's what we're doing. So if you're listening, you have that to look forward to. So make sure that you're subscribed. So Friday, when the episode comes out, you will know. But
So let me explain this next one we want to talk about.
oh yeah,
You have constantly been talking about how much you were disappointed in Damage.
oh yeah,
Damage this, damage that, blah, 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 blah. So this week I figured, oh well, I'm not going to bother.
yeah.
And then what happens?
So here's the thing. I had kind of given up on Damage. Okay. I've still given up on Silencer. Okay. And by that I mean I'll probably read the next issue anyway, but it may not make it to the podcast and I may not review it. But Damage, I had no intention of reading Damage number 4. And then I took a look at the cover and I saw that we had Damage wrapped up and Poison Ivy's there. And I said, all right, let me give it a chance. One last chance for Damage. And I'll tell you what, I'm glad that I did. And Dave, you missed out on a good one, sir.
So now I'm going to have to read it, but it's like,
Yeah.
well, why don't you tell me it was good?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
I mean, you definitely need to read it because, now all of the introductions have been made. All the heavy lifting has been done, and the story can just, Damage can just kind of be the character that he is and exist in his world in this series. We're moving on with the storytelling, and like we had even talked about how introducing some of DC's heavy hitters into the series, it happened too early. But this is an issue that really, I mean, there's a whole lot of Poison Ivy in it, and it's pretty damn good. Like, I almost hate to say, like, it's really good, very entertaining. And I tell you what, like, it makes me look at the series very differently.
All right.
At this point, I mean, I'm okay with just saying issues 1 through 3 didn't happen. Even though we need the character, we need some sort of introduction. I mean, for the most part, I thought that this was a pretty damn good comic.
Okay. All right, I'll read it.
Yeah, so I definitely, Dave, you need to pick it up. Definitely pick it up, give it a read, let me know. You might say I'm crazy and that this is just like the first 3, but I don't think so. I think this one stands out.
Well, we'll see. It's worth a shot. I mean, I can read it. It's not going to take that long. I don't have to spend a whole lot of time with it. As long as you don't make me write a review about it, I'm happy.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Can't make any promises. So I don't know if it inspired me enough to pick up Silencer and give that another try, but I think I'm definitely going to be reading Damage number 5.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, and series that we both agree on, and if Ben was here would agree on with us, we also had another issue of Deathbed.
Yeah, Deathbed number 3.
Yeah.
Okay. This title never ceases to amaze me.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think you could start off every issue saying, "Did they go there? Oh yes, they went there."
And then it happens.
That did happen.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about the cover for a second.
Yeah.
All right. He's wearing the big old MC Hammer like harem pants.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it's absurd, and it's all part of this Church of Luna, right? The Church of Luna, where somehow he accidentally on purpose, created a cult.
Yeah.
All right, and the purpose of him creating the cult, of course, was all sex and drugs and rock and roll. Okay, as one did in the 70s, apparently, right?
Yeah.
And that's how it starts. And then it gets crazier from then on. He and Val have been saved by these guys.
Mm-hmm. Which is where issue number 2 left off.
Exactly.
With the two of them being saved by this group of weirdos, or at least that look weird,
So it just gets crazier and crazier. I mean, we try not to give away too much, and it's like I hesitate to talk about this because he shows up at this place with his cult members, so clearly he's enjoying this.
Oh yeah.
Not only because there's all these naked people around, but they're naked people that love him.
Yes, and what's better than that?
he couldn't ask for anything more,
Yeah.
And Val's just kind of hanging out, and she's kind of interested. In some ways, her opinion of Luna is elevated a bit. That he
Yes.
could inspire and care for people, and people could be inspired by him
Mm-hmm.
and care for him. It's like, maybe there is something to this guy.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And like you said, it's hard to talk about to really get the point across without the specifics, without ruining the book. But there's a moment when Luna and Val kind of realize exactly what's going on and what they're looking at, what they're actually seeing. And they pick up on these little details that they missed.
Yeah,
And when that happens, you have to you have to go back to the first page
yeah,
and just look through the book again, because there's some things just hanging in your face the whole time.
the whole time, exactly. So, I mean, I guess it's not giving too much away, but
Yeah.
if you're a really clever reader and if you pay really close attention
Yeah.
to the details in the drawings,
Yeah.
that'll give you a clue. And it's really not that tough to figure out if you're
No.
paying attention
No,
to it.
honestly,
But
if you just look hard enough at the cover, you'll get it.
but still, it's really fun being drawn into this world, and
Oh
then
yeah.
once again, saying, "Are they going there?
Yeah.
Yeah, they went there."
Yeah, it happened.
And it's like, oh my god,
And I think
what?
again, like this really speaks to like the creative team's work here and their talent, that I was completely captivated. And when Val and Luna pick up on these details, I picked up on them too. Like
Yeah,
at that moment. And like we said before, it was all there before, and you could have realized where this was going, but you miss it because you're so engrossed and so immersed in the story. Like I said, you wind up missing it. And for me, that really just speaks to the talent of the creative team here, you know?
yeah, and one of the things that we don't always see
Mm-hmm.
is the creative team that seem to be working together really well.
Yeah.
Clearly, they're both in on what they're trying to do at the same time. So there are hints in the dialogue that are supported by minor details in the illustrations, and
Yeah.
vice versa. It's terrific the way they work together, and it's
Yeah.
like then this is one page. I don't know, not even quite halfway through it. It's like, wait a minute, is that what I think?
And yes, it
It's
is.
like, oh, why didn't I see that the first time I read this?
Yep. Exactly.
It's like, oh man, okay.
And this is one of those issues where just when you thought that it really couldn't get any more weird,
Yeah,
it gets more weird, and it ends on a very weird note. But the kind of weird that's exciting. That's great. I'm just really glad that we get the opportunity to read this and talk about it every week. I
I
find
mean,
it.
it's
Yeah.
gross, it's funny, it's really pretty damn insane most of the time.
Yeah.
Um, it does make sense in the reality that it creates. And here we are still trying to figure out whether we're identifying with Val the writer or Luna the hero, the hero of his own story, as
Yeah.
as we all are. We're all heroes of our own story. And it's just terrific.
It
Yeah.
really is. It
And there's
really is.
even one point where he talks about not being a reliable narrator.
Yes.
Oh, you think?
Yeah. Who would have thunk?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And again, like this comes back to, had I think Bennett said it last week or the week before, how there's weird and then there's weird.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
this is kind of that second weird, but it really works. It's just, I don't know. I've been very pleased
yeah,
with
yeah.
every issue so far. I find it very hard to believe that once issue number 4 comes out, we won't be talking about it on here. I can't see how we could possibly avoid it while it's in print. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's just great series all around. I look forward to reading it every single week.
Yeah,
So, but I think that's basically all the DC we wanted to talk about. How about we move on to Image?
sure. Yeah. Image Image had another number one this week with
Yes.
a title called Skyward.
Mm-hmm.
It's enjoyable. Okay,
Yes.
I had a good time reading this book,
Mm-hmm.
but it really doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And what I'm hoping is that they don't really try to explain what they're doing,
There's the ticket.
because there's nothing that could say that would make this scenario make sense. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how did they explain it in the
Well, you know what I think it is? I think what it comes down to is, you brought up the point saying that as long as it's not going to make sense, so let's just not try to make it make sense. Let's leave it as it is. I think that the world here, and essentially what happens is, if you haven't read anything about the series, gravity, Earth has a low gravity now, and out of the blue, one day things just start to float away. So as one can imagine, staying with your, can't even say feet on the ground, but staying at a safe distance to the earth is difficult. Yeah.
and the subtitle is "My Low G Life."
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's there, but like I said, this happens just completely out of the blue. And when the story takes off, it's 20 years after gravity kind of up and left. And I think that the story works, like you said, Dave, as long as we don't get caught up in the explanation. Because frankly, I don't really care what happened, why it happened. I don't care. I think that the story can be interested, just by focusing on the mundane aspects of life that you now have to do in low gravity. And that's my concern, is that going forward, we're going to get caught up in explanation, and there's, going to be too much.
this isn't a physics textbook. Okay,
Yeah,
so they just better stay away from trying to explain the physics of this,
exactly. Let's
because
keep
it's
it
just not
fun.
going to happen.
Yeah, let's keep it fun, because it is a fun book, and it has the potential to be very fun and
Yeah.
very entertaining.
Yep.
I also really like the look of the book. It's something that I think there's a ton of detail packed into each page. I always like that. I always like being able to, have good reason to reread a comic book just to spend a little more time with the visuals.
Yeah.
I like that. And this is one of those books that has a lot of great detail packed into each page. And it makes it an absolute pleasure to read. That's why I said I just don't want to get hunkered down by that story, by the explanation. As long as that stays away, I think we'll be fine.
Yeah. Yeah, they're telling a story, and I think I said this last week about I don't remember which book it was, but the story is told in three dimensions rather than two,
Yeah.
which is kind of fun. You get different perspectives, different point of view. How transportation is accomplished
Yeah.
is kind of entertaining. And certain aspects of society have changed. People don't think of things in the same ways as they used to.
Mm-hmm.
And it sets up for both humorous occasions and for dramatic occasions as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential here.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm willing to stick with it for a few more issues. I don't have any reason not to. But yeah, let's keep it up. Let's stay with Skyward. And from Image, we have another series that we've been talking about for some time now. We get another issue of Kick-Ass. We're on Kick-Ass number 3 right now.
Yeah.
And, story just keeps getting better and better. And I'll say that, not to give too much away, Patience finds herself in yet another predicament.
Yeah.
Which is very similar to the predicament she was in when we first met her. I like that, but now the stakes are a little bit higher. Some things have changed, and as readers, I think we're more vested in her as a character.
Yeah.
And we're really,
I mean,
I'm
a couple
concerned.
things happen she decides to do something like she's accepted the fact that she's this Robin Hood character
Yes.
essentially, and she's starting to overestimate her abilities and underestimate the risk. Plus, there are certain real surprises that are pretty shocking to her. Well, not shocking, but there are other aspects to what's happening that are disturbing to her as well.
Yes.
So there's the backstory to Patience that's suddenly gotten a little bit more interesting, and the foreground story of Kick-Ass that now the peril has really ratcheted up quite a bit. So if we're invested in the character in either way, this is a really good issue to read because
Yeah.
there's a lot going on with the main character that we can feel for her in one way or another.
Yeah. And two, on top of that, we have a whole new player added to the game.
Yeah,
A deadly experienced player. And already, we're only 3 issues in. And, I hate to say that now Patience is kick ass. She's up against, her most formidable foe yet. But it's the truth. She is now really going up against someone that's kind of scary.
yeah. I mean, if you had all the other characters being, the central casting type
Mm-hmm.
villains, okay.
Yeah.
Now you've got somebody who, as much as she's a superhero, he is a supervillain.
Yeah.
In terms of just his nature is villainous
Yeah.
as opposed to just being a criminal.
Yeah, and he definitely, I would go as far as saying, he is more of a villain where she is a hero. He's definitely got a few, few pounds on her. He's got a lot more experience in being bad than she does in being good.
Yeah,
And what I thought was very interesting was the first, I don't know, 6 or so pages of the book. We don't see Patience. We're spending time with this new character, and it's really interesting. And he's introduced in a very interesting way, and in a way that immediately he becomes familiar, and you understand this is the kind of person this is. And it's very entertaining. It's very entertaining. It works very well. We have a little bit of a lapse in action in the middle of the book. But again, the story starts out with a decent amount of action and ends with a decent amount of action. So it's very well balanced. I think this is another issue that's very well paced. As the story moves along, it's becoming interesting. There's always something for us to go back to and focus on, something that makes the comic worth rereading. And this is another one. I really enjoyed those first 6 pages when we're introduced to this new character. And I kind of spent a little time with the last scene as well. Especially the very last exchange, very last 2 pages, 3 pages. Like, they have me really eager to see what happens in issue number 4. The creative team here again was completely successful in, not only introducing a new character, not only raising the stakes, but also generating a great deal of interest for the next issue.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work that has to be done, and it was accomplished here.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
And for me, it didn't feel like anything was being done. It didn't feel like there was work being done. Yeah, I knew in the beginning the new character was being introduced, but I was glad. So for me, this is another great kick-ass issue, and I'm really looking forward to issue number 4 now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, they've done a good job establishing Patience as Kick-Ass,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and now I think we've gotten into the next stage of how the Kick-Ass hero has to deal with a more complicated, higher stakes world, and
Yes,
I'm looking forward to that.
definitely. Definitely. And another one from Image that we've said pretty good things about so far. We get another issue of The Further Adventures of Nick Wilson.
Yeah, we're up to issue 4 of 5.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the thing about Nick Wilson's he's an idiot. He
Yeah.
really doesn't get what's going on.
Yeah.
And I found the character really fascinating because he's just got all this stuff going on and he just doesn't get it. He doesn't know who his friends are. He doesn't know who his enemies are. And he kind of feels sorry for himself and he's a hard character to like, but he's a fascinating character to watch.
Yes.
And that's why I've been entertained for these 4 issues.
Mm-hmm.
But now, and I think we talked about it last time, it's like, okay, we're running out of time
Oh,
here.
yeah.
Um, so what happens next? So here we have that Nick is clueless.
Yes.
But in terms of the people that are his adversaries, let's say, their motivations aren't well explained or well demonstrated.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what I think it comes down to? This is definitely just a very character driven story. It's not very plot driven at all. And we were talking a little bit about this before we actually started recording, but I'm not really sure what the story is here.
Yeah.
I just know that I've enjoyed the time that I've gotten to spend with Nick Wilson, and I look forward to spending one issue worth of more time with him. I think I completely agree, like you said, Dave. He's a fascinating character that we do want to be around, we want to read about, we want to spend some more time with. But at the same time, I have no idea how this story could be tied up in one more issue.
Yeah.
Because I'm not really sure what kind of ending I'm really expecting here. I don't know what would fit. I don't know what I actually want from the end of the story.
Yeah, I mean, is he being set up for some kind of embarrassment, for some kind of fall or whatever? I don't know. And
Yeah.
how does that compare to the kinds of embarrassments and failures that he's subjected himself to?
Yeah.
Yeah, the first issue, what, isn't he throwing up on his potential girlfriend or something?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, so how much more of a loser can he be?
Yeah. Yeah. It's been a mess. It's
Yeah.
been a mess so far. And I think that, that's why it's so easy to kind of dive right in and just relate to Nick. And, his flaws are apparent, but at the same time, he's a lovable character. He really is. Once you get through that initial, this guy's an idiot, this guy's got some serious problems. Once you get past that.
Yeah, he's kind of like, everybody's got a friend like him.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
It's just weird. He's just overly affected by his past. He's not he's not a good guy, but he's not as bad of a bad guy as he thinks he is. He's just
Exactly.
kind of a loser, but not
Yeah.
not a bad guy.
No, not at all. And just speaking about this issue directly, I really appreciated the artwork, especially there's in the issue there's a story being told, right?
Yeah.
And it's being told from 2 to 2.5 perspectives.
Yes.
Okay. And I like how in the story, each time the story is being told, the illustration style changes.
Yeah, that jumped out at me as well. I mean, you got one that looks like it's straight out of the Archie comics.
Yes.
One of them's classic, Silver Age superhero stuff.
Yeah.
You got the immediate present day conversations that are in this hyper realistic
Yes.
artwork. And this is the new illustrator too.
Hmm.
So this guy just jumped in and owned it
Yeah.
in terms of in terms of storytelling. He really sets it up as to what the differences are in these points of view. And
It really is fascinating.
yeah, yeah. I mean, even there's his ex girlfriend. He spent some time with her versus the son of his arch enemy. He spent some time with with him, and both of these occur in present day. But there's something just a little bit more edgy about the interactions with his arch enemy's son than there is with the interactions with his ex girlfriend.
Yes.
Those
Yes.
interactions are just still kind of realistic, but softer. There's a scene in a bar, which is the grittiest of the gritty of all the present day depictions. It's really, yeah. I mean, I found myself going back to the book, and it's like, okay, here's how it changed. Here's the perspective. Here's the mood that we're getting. It's really fascinating how he does this. Oh, and there's this other scene that I completely forgot about. That's very drawn in despair, let's say.
Yes.
And oh, it's just absolutely perfect.
It really is. And like, I would love to see that, the sepia toned scene I'm talking about now, Dave.
Yeah.
I would love to see a whole
Oh, so you read
series,
my review, huh?
perchance.
Yeah, that's the view. That's the word I use. Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that what an editor is supposed to do?
Well,
Edit.
yeah.
But aside from
And
that,
your point being,
so the sepia toned, scene, the retelling, I really like that look, and I would love to see not this series, but a series completely, illustrated like that. It was just absolutely fantastic, and we're talking about the new illustrator was Ian Churchill, who
yeah,
jumped in for this one. Um, but yeah, I totally love that. And like you said, Dave, so fitting. It worked so well for the retelling and for the, the feel that was necessary, the tone that was necessary.
yeah,
This is just visual storytelling at its best.
yeah, yeah.
Totally taking advantage of the medium here. And, this is one of those books, this scene in particular reminds me of why I love comic books.
Yeah, I mean, you can point to these differentiations as being pretty high concept,
Yeah.
but there's nothing about this book that feels high concept at all.
No. No,
You
it
know,
doesn't.
so it's just highly skilled, if not high concept, and that's a a fine kind of a fine line to walk.
Yes.
And Churchill does an amazing job. He really does.
Absolutely. Especially just considering the fact that he's jumping in here. I think that's it for our Image comics that we wanted to talk about. Let's move on to Aftershock.
Yeah.
And
So we have Rough Riders Ride or Die. This
yes,
is a series for Aftershock that's been around for a while. Now we're issue 3 of this new arc, and we have, shall we say, a collection of interesting individuals, of
yes,
historic people that we know of that are now taking roles in an action adventure story. So we have the soon to be president of the United States, Teddy Roosevelt, and we got Annie Oakley and Harry Houdini, and most recently introduced to this whole thing because his whole supernatural bent is H.P. Lovecraft, who's the one that helps them connect to the supernatural.
yes.
Um, So it makes really good use of common perceptions of these historical characters. I mean, Thomas Edison's in it too. Jack Johnson, Monk Eastman. You know, Monk Eastman is this it says career criminal with a
Hmm.
streak of righteousness and certifiable death wish. He's the 20th century's first famous bad guy. Now, I'd never heard of him until I read this book, so I went
Yeah.
and looked him up. And yeah, damn, he really is a fascinating character. And he fits in this collection of people really well. So the assigned duties of these characters in the Rough Riders, although this isn't the real Rough Riders, but
Yeah.
you know, is pretty well thought out. Um,
Yeah.
and the story, part ghost story, part police procedural,
Yeah.
and it works pretty well.
So now I read issue number 1, right, of
Right.
the Rough Riders Ride or Die. Now, for no reason other than I haven't read them yet, I haven't read issues 2 and 3, right? What's the selling point for me to read issue number 1 again and get myself up to this current issue? Because I believe issue number 4 is the end, right, of Ride or Die?
Um,
I believe it
is it? I don't
is.
know. I just was kind of into it. I hadn't really because it exists in a world where these recurring adventures could always happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe the arc. Uh, yeah, I mean, that sounds about right. I don't
Yeah.
remember
So
offhand.
what's that selling point?
Okay. What I love about it is these larger than life historical figures in a way brought down to earth to solve completely otherworldly problems. They're fascinating characters in the real world and fascinating characters in the fictional world. And when you take both of them and understand that most of what we know of their legacy is probably fictional anyway,
Yeah.
it kind of blends into this really fun story that is easy to connect with.
Yeah. And see, I'm flipping through this now, and the book looks amazing.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, I'm sold. I'm going to reread issue 1 and then 2 and 3.
It's just great, and it's pretty gory and not that scary, but it is a kind of a horror supernatural based based story. And I don't know, I just the more I read it, the more I like it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm into it. Like I said, I read issue 1. I'm ready for 2 and 3.
Yeah,
And another one that I'm pretty excited about, also from Aftershock, is Her Infernal Descent number
yeah,
1.
that was a fairly fascinating book.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. So this is a modern retelling of Dante Alighieri's Inferno, and
That's
I
kind of an overstatement, I would say, but
yeah, I do agree. I agree with you there. And I bring up in the review that's up on the brazenbull.com now. I wrote a review for this issue, and one of the points I brought up is that I feel as though there's a little bit added weight that a story can take on once you put that this is a retelling of something else, of a classic work, because you're really opening the door for comparison. At that point, I typically prefer this story is inspired by something else as opposed to this is a modernized retelling. But we're also I'm kind of just splitting hairs here. Still, I think that in terms of pacing and how the story has been updated some, that we see here in the first issue, I'm pleased. I'm pleased. It takes very little time for us to go from introductions to find ourselves standing in hell, basically.
yeah,
And it's a concept that is familiar, but I think does benefit from a bit of modernizing.
yeah,
Already, there's some characters, some real life figures that wind up, not going to go into too much detail again, not to ruin it, that there are some familiar faces in hell.
Yeah.
That, you know, considering this is 300 years or so after the initial after the Divine Comedy was written, you know, people that we find in hell now, Dante Alighieri never could have imagined being in hell. You know, they didn't exist. So I think that, you know, by including new characters and new familiar faces, the story does benefit from a modernization.
Yeah.
And it's so far, I think that what's been added has been added in an intelligent way. It's not modernized for the sense of modernizing. You know, it makes sense. There's one or two things that I wasn't happy with. Again, maybe once issue 2 comes out, we can go into a little bit greater.
Well, we kind of have to throw a disclaimer in here, as Ben wisely pointed out last week.
Yeah.
You know, you got two English majors talking to each other here.
Yeah.
So we're going to nitpick some of the literary references in this thing beyond what normal people would do.
Yeah.
To be honest with you.
Yeah, like I'm really trying to cut it back now.
Yeah, but let's throw that out the window for a second and say that the encounters that the main character has with these people really tell the story well.
Yes.
You know, it tells us about the main character who is being led through limbo at first by a great thinker who is familiar in kind of a mystical, metaphysical way of heaven and hell.
Yeah.
Who would be someone who presumably could communicate to an individual person that needs to be led on their mission to go through hell. I'm a little sketchy on exactly why she's doing this.
Yeah.
You know, we know that her family's dead. Don't really know why, but they're in hell, and she's trying to save them. So,
which makes sense.
But we don't know exactly why.
Yeah, we don't know if they. I mean, I think it's safe to presume here that their eternal damnation wasn't deserved, or at least the woman, the mother at the heart of the story, doesn't think so, because she does. When she learns of their faith, she is shocked. But I guess anyone, if you learn that a member of your family wound up going to hell and not heaven, you would be shocked, unless that person, was a lifelong criminal or, murderer or something like that. Then it wouldn't be far-fetched. But clearly, she's taken aback.
Well, it's some, her children, and they were children, not just
yes,
weren't they? Hard to tell how old she is, though.
I'm not too sure about that. I just know it is her family.
Well, you got like kids' drawings on the refrigerator, though, so I assume that they might have been young.
Yeah.
So
it's
there's details
tough,
that we need to find out more about, and it builds up. This is really more of a prologue, I think.
Yes, definitely.
Because she's at the gates of hell at the end of it. Taking the next step on this journey, which, I don't know. I think it's really fascinating. I think that this is not, at least at this point, very action-packed. I'm not even sure if that's where they're going to go with this.
Yeah, I don't think it's going that way.
There tends to be a lot of discussion about philosophical almost.
Yeah. It is going to be a bit more philosophical than it is going to be an action-oriented.
Yeah, but you can, getting the old English made. There's some of the stuff they do here that I don't think tracks with the characters they're putting those words to, and the poetry is really pretty awful. I just got to say that.
Yeah, just throw that out there.
Yeah.
I mean, certain things I love the concept. Like I said, I am a bit concerned. I think overall, like I really like the look of this book, even though we haven't really gotten into hell yet and we're just in limbo. I can tell already just from the design, we're kind of going to get hell light here. I don't think anything's going to be really over the top or grotesque, which is something that I would kind of look forward to. Going on this journey, there's a lot. It can be visually intense, or I think it should be visually intense, and I don't know if we're gonna really get that intensity. But I still think that it's gonna be a great series. I think it's gonna be a really, really good series. I think it's gonna be entertaining. I'm looking forward to seeing, like you said, Dave, learning why her family's in hell.
Yeah.
Because there has to be some sort of, obviously there's some sort of reason, and I figure that since there's multiple members, they're going to find themselves in different circles, whatever. I don't know if it's necessarily going to be her rescuing them or just coming to terms with the reasons why they're in hell. I personally hope that it's that second reason, that this is her, realizing that maybe the life she was living or the life that they lived caused them to land in hell, and there's still time for her, to do better. But I don't know. I would rather see that than the let's rescue the family from hell story. That's all. That's what I'm looking forward to. At least that's what I'm hoping for. Yeah. But overall, so far, I think it's a solid first issue. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens once we actually get into hell, because we're right at the gates now.
Yeah, I think that in terms of the horror aspects of it, in terms of potential more, action's probably too strong of a word, but there's probably a lot more gonna actually happen once she gets to hell. So I'm kind of looking forward to that.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. And I think that's it for Aftershock. So how about we wrap up with some IDW books?
Sure, yeah.
I think the first one that we definitely have to talk about, it's in issue number 1, Antar the Black Knight from Nenendia Korafor.
Yeah.
We've reviewed her books, the Binti series from Tor on the Brazen Bull. We've been fans for some time now, right? I think Binti was actually probably one of the first book reviews that we did on the Brazen Bull. Now that I think about it,
it's been a while, but yeah, that was an early one. This is an interesting book because it's taken from 6th century epic poem.
Yeah.
I'm really not familiar with this piece. It's from something called the Poem of Antar by Antar ibn Shaddad. It's this interesting epic based on this epic that has all the trappings of sword and adventure kind of thing, like
it's
like a Conan the Barbarian kind of thing. An Edgar Rice Burroughs, Robert E. Howard kind of thing, except that it's based on a real epic, and it has a wide-reaching span in terms of a real world story of people moving across the world, mm-hmm. and refugees and battles and I don't know, how would you oppressors and slaves and just it's just literally epic in terms of
that's what I was gonna say. It's epic. It's a multifaceted tale, wide reaching. And, I like the idea that we have, presumably we're looking at the making of a hero here.
Yeah. Very much reminiscent, and it's backwards. It's like this came before Conan, but I read Conan first.
Yes.
But it's the same kind of hero story of rising up from oppression
Yep.
and what have you to become a hero that is avenging his people essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love a good underdog story as much as the
Yeah,
next guy. Um, already in this issue, we see that oppression you were talking about, Dave, and we see that there's this great strength and great potential residing in some of these oppressed people.
yeah,
One being our protagonist here.
yeah,
We see moments of great restraint, and then moments of great physical strength.
yeah,
And it's really interesting, and I think that the way this book is laid out, way it's written, way it's plotted, it's a cyclical story that really works. We are dropped in the middle of this story that is really thought provoking. A story that's very interesting, a story that's rich with great detail already. There's a lot of there's a lot being introduced, there's a lot being explained, a lot being set up, but still it's being done in a way that works and that's entertaining, which isn't always, which is difficult to do. Especially like you said, Dave, we're starting off an epic here.
mm,
There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot of story going on. We're going to be moving a lot. So, a strong first issue for a
yeah,
series like this is imperative to its success. This is something that a series like this, you have to hook the reader early on and either convince them to stay or let them know that if they stay and they keep reading, their time is not going to be wasted and they're going to be entertained.
yeah,
And I think that this was a successful issue in achieving that. I mean, I'm really looking forward to what happens next,
yeah,
to learning more, because I feel this is going to be another one of those stories, another one of those series that, while it's progressing forward, it's also going to be reaching into the past. We're going to have a story that's moving in multiple directions, which really just adds to the overall reading experience, the overall depth of the story.
yeah,
While we're moving forward into the future, we keep an eye on the past. I love the idea of that, and I don't know. It feels fresh.
yeah,
It's just, I'm really really excited about this one. I think the writing's fantastic.
yeah,
Fantastic writing, great artwork. The color work especially is worth noting. It's just absolutely beautiful, from dark interior shots to blazing outside, middle of the desert, just beautiful
yeah.
reds and oranges. It's a beautiful beautiful book.
Subtle colors, but you get this sense of wide open spaces and immensity and um, remoteness about
Yeah,
it that occurs in other books, but this is really demonstrated really well, and I can appreciate that.
definitely. It definitely makes for an immersive reading
Yeah.
experience. Anything else from IDW you want to talk about?
What do we got? IDW, Highest House.
Okay.
What are we up to issue 3 now?
Yeah.
I like the story of Highest House a lot. It's another one of those epic type stories. There's a servant in a house, a slave actually, and he finds a way to well, he's determined to free himself. He's determined to free his people. And the thing about this is how intricate the world is,
Yeah.
how complex society is, and how he somehow is an important part of this. And he doesn't quite understand that he is important, but he understands that people are important, which is contrary to what he's been taught. So he's behaving like the hero that he's ultimately supposed to become, while in the background we hear that there really actually is something special about him. So I get the feeling that this is a much larger story that can be told in just a few issues.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to that because the story is so rich. It's just one of those worlds that have been built to great detail and sense that I really want to find out more about this world and society and the great battles to come.
Hmm.
And we're barely to the point of meeting the hero. And unless they fast forward till when he's a grown up, there's a lot of adventures that this kid has got to go through, and I'm interested in finding out about it.
Yeah. Now,
You know,
see, I haven't read this issue or the first two issues. Now, I'm just right now, while we're talking, flipping through the book, and it's not really appealing to me. Like I said, if you say that it's a great story, I believe it's a great story, and I think it's worth giving a read.
yeah, I'm liking it. I'm liking the story a lot.
Good, good. Another one, complete change of pace here.
Yeah, really, a complete surprise too. It's
Oh,
like,
yeah. Pleasant surprise. Sonic the Hedgehog #3 from IDW. So I was a fan of the Sonic the Hedgehog video games. My first system I had was a Sega Genesis, and I had a Sega Nomad, if any of you know what that is, the portable Sega Genesis that I'm pretty sure nobody bought because it used to eat batteries. Like, you'd have to put like 8 batteries in it every 3 hours. It was ridiculous. But I used to really like Sonic the Hedgehog. And when I saw that IDW was coming out with this new series, I was pretty eager to jump in and just read it as a sort of palate cleanser, I guess you could
yeah,
say.
it's like you look at it, and the original reaction is low expectations.
Yes.
Oh yeah, this looks like it'll be kind of cute. Yeah, maybe I'll check it out.
Yep.
And then what happens?
And then, I was surprised, pleasantly surprised by this kind of whirlwind of just action and fun and a well-written book, well-illustrated book that left me looking forward to the next issue. I expected to read Sonic #1, say, yeah, that was fun. I'm glad it lasted as long as it did, and then move on. But I don't know. I can't get enough of it. It's great. And I'm pretty sure this is only a 4-run issue series, 4-run series, which I'm sure we're going to have a longer ongoing after
Well,
this.
it's got to be. I mean, it beat all kinds of expectations. Did
Oh, yeah.
they have to do another print run on issue #1?
Yeah, the issue #1 is ready in its second printing, or I believe the second printing comes out in May, I want to say. But it was one of those situations where, issue 1 had to get rushed back to printing, which for me, that makes my inner child, do a
Well, I mean,
cartwheel.
that's great news for any title.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
when you got you know, what could be considered just a product tie-in title,
yeah.
it turns out to totally exceed expectations in terms of content as well as sales.
Yes.
I mean, man, that's a win-win.
Oh, yeah.
For
And
sure.
for me, like, this is yes, there was a cartoon, whatever, but this is a video game comic book. But what's interesting is it's a successful video game comic book that isn't Assassin's Creed. It's not Halo. It's not Warcraft. It's not Gears of War. The story in Sonic was relatively simple. There was almost, from what I remember, the story wasn't the center of the game. It was just having fun.
Yeah.
So the fact that we can have a comic book based on that, with source material that was pretty bare, I don't know. I just think it's great. And the fact that it's doing so well that issue 1 went into a second printing, like, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm just having a really good time with it. I'm really hoping that we get more Sonic comic books. I'm sure that we will. And yeah, issue #3, another great issue. We have Knuckles here, favorite of mine.
Mm-hmm.
So any of you Sonic Knuckle fans out there, definitely pick it up. Yeah, I can't say enough about it. It's a whole bunch of fun and a pleasant surprise for me. So definitely recommend picking that up. And with Sonic and IDW out of the way, I think, Dave, that's it for the week.
Cool.
Yeah, so, all right, guys, this is the end of episode number 12 of the Brazen Bull's weekly comic book podcast. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, like the video, and visit thebrazenbull.com for more great comic book content. Until next week, folks.
Bye.